Calling this meeting to order Monday, January 27th at 6 p.m. Crosby, would you do roll call, please?
Jason? Mike?
Here.
Jake?
Here.
Dale?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Carolyn's running late. Craig?
Here.
Crosby here.
This is an open meeting and it has been posted. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Up first, we have Employee of the Month.
So, Tracy, could you please come forward? This evening, we recognize Tracy Telotsko from Section Elementary School. So, Tracy's nominators said, it's with great pleasure that we recognize Tracy for her exceptional contributions and unwavering dedication to our school community. Tracy embodies the qualities that make her an invaluable asset to our team. A positive attitude, a strong work ethic, reliability, and a deep commitment to support our students. Tracy consistently demonstrates her ability to build strong, meaningful relationships with every student, especially those who face unique challenges. She has a remarkable ability to create a safe, supportive environment where students feel understood, valued, and empowered. Her remarkable work ethic is complemented by her natural ability to de-escalate situations, recognizing when students need support and offering a calm presence in the moments that matter most. Tracy is truly Johnny on the spot, always ready to step in and provide the help our students need, often before they even ask for it. Tracy strikes the perfect balance between fun and focus for the students she supports. She creates an atmosphere where students enjoy their lessons while staying on task and engaged. Her positive energy, flexibility, and kind demeanor make her a true role model for both students and colleagues alike. Thank you, Tracy, for everything you do. Your dedication, compassion, and hard work make a lasting impact, and we are incredibly fortunate to have you as part of our team. You're deeply appreciated and essential to our success.
Congratulations and thank you. We do not have any citizens' comments, correct? Okay, we're moving on to student reports, Section Elementary School. Must be in the front row.
You can go right in front of them if you want. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's parents who want to come here and take pictures, feel free to come on up here and just have a seat and take pictures.
I would just say next slide, please, and I'll bring it forward for you, okay?
You can.
Come on, right in the front and take a picture. Jump right here in front, please. Really. From behind us? Great. Okay, great.
Craig can always take it. He's got the best
Okay.
Instagram here.
Yeah, right.
Welcome section. Just so you know, just pull up the mic and get it right up to your mouth so we can hear you.
Loud and proud, okay? Can you introduce yourselves first, please?
There's going to be a slide after
Okay.
this one.
You have to talk in the microphone, though.
It's okay.
Hi, we are
You got to talk in the microphone.
Elementary.
There you go.
Our theme this year is Soar High and Dream Big. At Section, the mission is to empower confident learners and enrich our community. The vision is to nurture competent, curious learners who are inspired to grow, contribute, and make a positive impact within their community. And finally, our motto is to honor all with kindness and support. Next slide. My name is Addie Sear, and I'm a 5th grade section student council member.
My name is Lexi Nelson. I'm a 6th grade section elementary student.
My name is Elia Pullman, and I'm a 5th grade executive board member.
My name is Aurora Webb, and I'm a 6th grade executive board member of section.
please.
Hawks Habits Day is a day for students to interact with their expected responsibilities as students. It helps them understand their responsibilities with a close-up view, and demonstrations are provided. In total, there are 13 different rotations that students will visit throughout the morning, as well as learning how to be a great hawk in different environments.
6th grade section students step up to help teach the school how to be a great hawk in different environments. Different environments include inside, outside, and on the bus located on the property. There's a staff member to support the hawk ambassador while they talk about the provided information on their station.
Next slide, please. Here at Section, we strongly encourage students to do their best, whether it's with academics or being responsible, respectful, safe, and kind. There are 4 main ways that we support our students. The first way is the Hawk of the Month. This is a monthly event. How this event works is that each homeroom teacher and specialist teacher chooses a student. This student has demonstrated the theme of the month. What are the themes, you ask? Well, each month we have a different theme for helping kids to succeed. For example, in January, we motivate kids with the theme of being responsible, respectful, safe, and kind. This really helps the students reboot their focus on making good choices with starting a new year. At our school section, we love learning as well as having fun. Like I mentioned, there are monthly themes here at Section. These monthly themes help remind our students of how to be a good hawk. The monthly themes are good traits to have as a person. The following monthly themes are themes that we've had so far. September was be respectful, responsible, safe, and kind. That was our first month of the school year, so we really encourage students to do their best. In October, we had leadership and community, which really pushes our students to be their best. November was kindness and gratitude, which really shows Thanksgiving for that month. December is pay it forward and generosity, because Christmas we obviously give gifts and we love being kind. And January was a reboot month. We revisit being respectful, responsible, safe, and kind.
At Section Elementary, we feel like having trimester rewards is a great way to keep our hawks on the path to success. Those who choose not to follow the expected behavior will not get to participate in those fun rewards. One example is that if you get a major or a specified numbers of minors, you will not get to participate in the reward. For assemblies, we encourage kids to pay attention and listen to the information our teachers introduce.
Next slide, please.
Section 60 is a PTG-sponsored fundraiser. There are 60 minutes of physical activities for all grade levels. There are 13 rotations in Section 60. Each station is roughly 4 minutes. There are indoor and outdoor activities at every station. There is a volunteer to overview at each station. The activities range from calming yoga to playing basketball. Some favorite stations are rock climbing and crazy pin knockdown.
Next slide. Jack-o'-lantern Drawn is a community-sponsored event that our school student council gets the option to participate and carve pumpkins. Everyone checks off a box and say if they want to carve a pumpkin. Then we are given a letter and come up with a different idea we have. The display will then say Section Hawks. We enjoy being able to promote Section School.
Next slide, please.
At Section, we love including family in our school. Sandwiches with Someone Special is a PTG-sponsored event. It is a week-long event, and the book fair is held in the school during the whole week. The students can shop with their visitors and have a great time.
Next slide, please.
Student council members were given the opportunity to decorate ornaments for the state capitol tree. This year's theme was celebrating 125 years of Wisconsin state parks. An example of what ornament some did was Wisconsin Dells and Mirror Lake State Park. As a student council representative, we are very proud that we were able to be given this opportunity.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great job. What? 2 and 3 together? Yeah.
It's a hard act to follow.
That is a hard act to follow. It is every time the students come.
I'm
It's
so
awesome.
proud of them. They wrote that themselves.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
I thought that was, they practiced today. We practiced, and I said, who wrote that? They're like, well, we wrote it. I was like, that's pretty
And
good.
to have a
So they're
good
going
time.
They're going to write my newsletters going forward. So, off the hook there.
All right, well, welcome.
Well, thank you. Okay. Well, the students kind of got everything started for us. As Section Hawks, our motto is that we honor all with kindness and support. That's been a long-standing motto at Section, and one that we truly follow up with the students on and make sure that they're living every day.
Talk in the microphone, please.
Oh, gosh. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'm going to just go beep, beep. So this year, we have a math goal that is a continuation of the work that we had done last year. So our goal this year is that by the end of this school year, our students will demonstrate the following proficiencies, which is a score of a 3 on a problem-solving rubric. On our problem-solving rubric, we focused on 3 specific math problem-solving areas. These were the same areas that we focused on last year, but we felt that there was still room for the students to grow in this skill, so we continued with that goal this year, but just set higher benchmarks. So last year, we focused on 3 areas: making sense of a problem, representing a solution, and accurately solving and checking work. At Section, we found that our students were very strong in computation, but when it came to solving math problems, story problems, and multi-step problems, that was an area we could grow in. So when we started last year, you can see in the first column is our primary initial results in assessing the students, and the far right column were our outcomes. So we use those outcomes to develop our benchmarks for this year, which is 90% in making sense of a problem, 75% in representing a solution, and then 75% in accurately solving and checking. Okay. Before we set this goal, can you just flip? Thank you. Before we set this goal, we did not have all of our forward exam data. So we really had to go off of the data that we had collected in-house last year to determine if this was, again, something we wanted to move forward. In November, we got all of our forward exam data to kind of show us, did this work? And we saw growth in our achievement. So our math achievement went from a 94.7 to a 95.9. Our growth in math, which is something that we have been working feverishly on to grow our students in math, went from a 62.2 to a 66.0. So for us, that was great growth. We were very excited to see that because that was the primary focus of doing this work. Additionally, we grew the number of students in our advanced category from 27.3% to 45.3%. So that was about an 18-point step of movement of students to our advanced category. Very proud of that, but we're most proud of the fact that we had 0% of our students in the developing category in math for last year. So we're gonna continue with that work. It's a lot of hard work that the teachers have been doing, and a lot of hard work that our students have been doing as well. We're challenging them, and they're digging in, and they're embracing the challenge that we're putting before them. So we've done this for a year. How is it going to look different, and how are we going to reach this goal? This year, we created a problem-solving dashboard. On that dashboard, it houses all of the documents that are aligned to the problem-solving work goal by grade level. So any grade level can look at the work that the students are doing, the problems they're solving the year before and the year after to kind of see what that metric looks like. We reviewed our priority standards. So any standard that we did not receive 50% proficiency on, those are the standards that we wrote our questions on this year. So we really looked at what are those pieces that the students weren't getting, and how do we design questions around that to ensure that we're moving those particular standards forward. So then we aligned all of those problem sets to our new curriculum, our Bridges unit, and aligned our focus standards as well. And then finally, we created grade band problem solving rubrics. So K2 has a rubric, and 3rd through 5th grade has a rubric. And then we took those rubrics and we wrote them into student-friendly language. So not only do the teachers have a rubric that they're working from, that they agreed upon and wrote, but the students have an opportunity to self-assess themselves on the rubric to see how they feel they did on their problem-solving work. So currently, our winter data shows that right now on FAST, we have 93.3% of our students on the college pathway are low risk at the winter screening. In fall, we are at 91.5, so we've seen some growth there. And we have less than 1% of our students, it's 0.6%, who are in the below or the bottom category on our FAST assessment. So we feel like the continuation of this work has been worth the effort that the students and the staff are putting in to reach the goal. What questions can I answer for you?
What was that? I'm sorry.
What questions can I answer for you?
Any questions? The hawk.
I knew that was coming. So at Section Hawks, at the beginning of the school year, we started this last year. On the first day of school, we give all of the students a feather, and they can design and create the feather however they want. And then Mr. Grunman, our art teacher, takes the feathers and creates our design and our logo for the year. So last year it was hawk wings. This year it's the hawk's head. So that's all of over 400 students and their feathers put together to design our hawk for the year. It's really neat, isn't it?
Really neat.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I feel like problem solving is always a big hurdle, especially with my kids going through homework as you're reading math problems in general.
Right.
It's the hurdle of figuring out what the problem is in order for them to solve it. Because if they don't know what the problem is, they can't, it's just a big waste anyway. They can't do anything.
Absolutely, and that was our starting point. We looked at problems and practiced reading them and determining, is it a solution equation that they're looking for? Is it a situation equation that they're looking for? Teaching the students how to read the problem first, identify those key features, and then move forward in solving.
Is there a curriculum that you're using for your teachers in order to teach them how to teach this?
We used a variety of different resources. Our main resources is, well, last year was Everyday Math, this year is the Bridges curriculum, but we're pulling problems from there aligned to those standards that the students didn't meet proficiency on the year before, and then practicing those steps with them.
Awesome. Is there anything in particular, though, that you're teaching, that the teachers are using in order to help the students break down how to be better problem solvers, or is it just
Yes, we had a math practices book that we used by a well-known author that breaks down different ways to look at problems and to teach. So we practice multiple strategies as a staff, and then the staff carried those over into the classroom.
I'd love to learn that as a parent.
To say these great scores don't surprise me. As you know, I was just in your school. Never talked or met so many new teachers in my life. They were all very welcoming, and it was great seeing all the collaboration in the classrooms on their day off. They were working hard and collaborating, and I love how you guys do a little differently, where you have the two classes together, and how the teachers were explaining it to me. I forgot their names, I apologize. How if there are a certain section of kids that are a little behind, she can go off on this side of the classroom with them, and people who are more advanced can be on the other side, and everybody's growing.
And
So
everyone's
I thought that was phenomenal.
And that's our goal, is to grow everyone, and we're proud of that growth that we had last year. We're hoping to see further growth this year.
So great job.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
All right, Parkview Middle School project update.
So we just wanted to give the board and the community a little bit of an overview as to where we're at with the project. It's right there, Tom. Yep. So just to remind everybody, project timeline, we've been on this timeline now for about 1.5 years as we've been targeting the completion date. So our goal still is to be fully in the building in August of '27 to start the '27 and '28 school year. We are working in the design process so that from a construction standpoint, the new building or the new addition to the building, about 210,000 square feet, is done in March of 27. And that would give us some options to free up some space in the old building to begin the renovations and begin demo work. So we're trying to coordinate all of that right now. We've got a great team from Cullen and a great team from Bray that are putting a lot of effort into getting us to where we need to be. Tom, if you could advance. If you remember back, the original layout of the new school, it included that yellow block. That is the current Parkview Middle School portion that we're keeping. It's that backwards L shape. That is going to be the space that is heavily renovated. When we were doing the pre-referendum project, the building was a little bit more blocky than what that is. But as we started to go through and look at what classrooms need to be what next to what classrooms, where do we place the library, where do we place the gym, how does the new building butt up against the old building, we came to this footprint. And there is opportunity to modify this a little bit. It might change slightly. But this is where we're at from a site layout so far. We obviously have to get approval from permit approval from the village, and we're working with the DOT. There's many layers to this, from the county to the state. But you can see in our plan there, we're proposing somewhere in the neighborhood of 450 parking spots. And for community members that use this on the weekends for field park activities, we currently have about 250 spots at Parkview. So we are increasing the parking space substantially. The athletic field will stay right where it is. We are going to renovate that, improve that. But you can see how the traffic flows. As we talked about in the pre-referendum, pre-question work, you can see where we're doing the entrances to the lot and then the exit. So currently we're very near the intersection of 83 and Veterans Way. We are moving those away. Now, this is part of a traffic study that needs to be approved by the state, and we'll get final recommendations as to what we need to do as far as an extra lane for turning, any lights that we might need to put in. So all things that we're waiting for, but you can see how the building is going to lay out right now from a green space standpoint, a parking standpoint, and then where the building footprint is. Tom, if you could go to that PDF doc, please. And if you could zoom into the first floor rendering there. So the building, if you look at the spaces, the gold is the spaces that are being renovated. And in that area of the building, we currently have art rooms. We're going to be using the cafeteria as a multi-purpose wrestling space, additional bathrooms there, family and consumer ed, a makerspace. So our CTE courses at the middle school will be occupying portions of that older building. And from a renovation standpoint, we can go in there. If you remember what those classroom pictures look like of the renovated spaces, where everything is updated, from the lights to the HVAC to all of the utilities, everything goes in there is new. The guts of the building will be used in that, for those classrooms. And we're going to be working with Dustin on the layout and the footprint of those classes, but this is, again, just overall layout. You can see in the light blue there where we're working with band and music. We'd have a dedicated band and music space. If you've been in Parkview right now in the middle of the day, you can hear when the band is playing all over the school. We want to have updated spaces for the music department there, but we also want to keep them in an area where they're not necessarily influencing what goes on in the math classroom. We are looking at a very large gymnasium space. We talked about that. You can see where that is right in the middle of the building. One of the features that we heard from the middle school that the students valued was they come in the morning and they kind of circulate like cattle around the middle of the building. So we've created that hallway flow so that kids, can get into the building. They'll be able to wander around before school starts. But you can see that dark blue block where that's the cafeteria space. We are working on a larger performance stage in there, nothing like what we have at the PAC, but a space where, for instance, for the elementary, if you've got elementary kids right now, you know what those concerts are like in the winter or in the spring. The parking lot is packed. People are walking down the highway. I'm looking at you, Carolyn, with Big Bend. With the large parking footprint, we would be able to move some of those performances to the middle school because we know that the PAC at the high school is usually very, very busy. And we're looking at seating in there from the neighborhood of 600 to 700 people. So again, that that footprint is not fully confirmed yet, but just kind of let you guys know where we're going. You can see on top there the light yellow on both sides of what it says main entry. We would have the flow on the left-hand side, which would be the main office where the principal, assistant principal, school resource officer, those names on there right now are just placeholders in these offices. The walls obviously haven't gone final yet, but that, just so you know, kind of where we would be positioning that. On the other side would be the student services piece with counselors, the conference space, storage space, academic support. So we would have that main entrance into the building. It would be a secured main entrance with all of the features that we would need in order to do that. Tom, if you could just back it up a little bit. In the right-hand side there, we have the dark blue and the lighter blue. This is where the grade levels now are going to start to stack, and we'll show you the second floor in a minute. But we are creating flexible classrooms kind of on the perimeter. So it doesn't matter. Those classrooms could be for the purposes of math, science, or math, social studies, English language arts, some spaces for special education. Those are going to be general classrooms. You know, the interesting thing about designing a building is you're making decisions today and you're seeking input from individuals today that, you know, may not be here in 5 years, may not be here in 10 years, and certainly won't be here for the duration of the building. I mean, we'll get 50, 60, 70 really good years out of this school. So we're taking feedback. We've met with teacher teams in 45-minute to hour increments where we've gone through space by space. What are some things that you need from built-in cabinetry to technology, things like that. So we're getting that input, and what we're going to do is take, you know, the best ideas that we can fit into those classroom spaces, and then we're using that as the layout. You'll see on all 3 floors, though, that we have dedicated science space. Those classrooms are bigger, and we have to have that lab prep and science prep built in associated with it. We also have to be able to put in the gas, the electric, the water, and so on and so forth, and it's more efficient if you stack those classrooms. Down in the middle there, you can see a collaboration event lobby. That'll be large group instruction. We're still working on this space on the first floor, but Tom, this is a good time if you could pull up to the second floor then. You can see the second floor layout then, the kind of average blue, not light blue, not dark blue. It says library up there. What we'd be looking at is a 2-level library / collaboration space where the second floor would overlook the first floor. And again, the plans are still in design, but that would be open from a supervision and a utilization standpoint. We are putting a walking track in there. We do know that the gym will be heavily used. That will be a nice spot for families, for parents, for grandparents, or for citizens on the weekend if we can, you know, work out that access piece where they can come in and walk on a designated track space. Part of that is going to, in our design right now, part of that is going to overlook the gym so that parents could see their kids in practice as they're taking the labs. You can see the second floor classroom layout looks very similar to the first floor classroom layout. So you can see how we're stacking that, you know, one on top of the other. In those spaces, there's room for 400 students. So that, just so you know, 400, 400, 400 would get us our 1,200. That doesn't necessarily take into consideration that students might be like on this floor in world language for a different period. We do have you see that classroom down on the bottom there, it says health. That would be a PE classroom so that when kids need to have, you know, classroom pieces, the gym could still be used for the activity. The kids could go to the classroom for instruction. And then Tom, if you would go up to the third floor, please. And you can see where the third floor of the academic wings is, you know, located. You can see that there's stairs. There's 4 sets of stairs on each floor going up and down. On the bottom left, you'll see a small square right next to where it says lockers and stairs. Tom, if you could move your cursor right over down bottom left, right there. That little box there represents the elevator. So the elevator would access all 3 floors in that point, and it would be big enough for our fire department if they needed to bring the stretcher in. It would be big enough for our IT folks to go up and down, and also our custodial maintenance. So this plan was drawn in the beginning of the month. There have already been changes to the layout of spaces, but wanted to be able to bring this forward, show you where we've gotten at this particular point. It is our goal to have the almost finalized footprint ready to go by February 1st, February 1st or 2nd, which is 3rd, which is next Monday, which is our next team meeting. So we want to have that. We're looking to get the first package together in March then, so that we have those final plans squared away and ready to go. So we've taken an aggressive timeline because, as I mentioned before, we're looking at that March of 27 as a possible opportunity then to start to shift students from the old middle school building into the new middle school building. And we see the benefit of that if we run right up to June and then we make that transition. We're going to see, June, July, and August are going to be a mad scramble. And we want to be able to give our teachers the opportunity to use the summer to get their classroom set so that when professional development comes around in August, they're able to be part of professional development. You can kind of focus on that start of the school year instead of trying to rush your boxes in and your pictures in and all of that. So we've been a little bit more aggressive with that timeline in hopes that we create more time in the summer, the remainder of the school year, the spring and the summer, so that our construction management companies and our contractors can get in there and get that work done.
So September of 27, are the elementary schools going to be ready for 4K, or is that going to be down the road after the middle school's done?
Yeah, so we're to take that 4K conversation, school by school and enrollment by enrollment. If we had to go in there and do work, we would be looking at covering that on our own. But from the space standpoint, once the sixth graders come, then we'll have those spaces available to us at the elementary. And how does that marry itself with kindergarten? If we have 2 kindergarten classrooms, but we go down to 1 because of enrollment, we could do another 4K classroom. So we'll be monitoring and studying in the enrollment part and then the actual physical spaces at the elementaries as we move forward.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's our goal by September of 27 to just be watering grass. That would be ideal. Put the sprinklers out and call it good. Are there questions on this?
So I just want to make it clear for anybody who's watching that the 4K is not part of the referendum.
4K was not part of the referendum, but there's,
Make sure.
natural dominoes for space. When we came up with this plan, we were really looking at a generational space solution for our elementary schools and our middle schools. By moving the 6th graders up, we naturally have space at the elementaries, and we then have room to grow. When the subdivisions go in, when families are moving in, we have the ability to accommodate that then and not have to touch the elementary with heavy, heavy work. I mean, desks, paint, things like that, that's all easy to accomplish, but not heavy renovations. So we wanted to make sure that we were clear with that.
Thanks for that, by the way.
Other questions? All right, we will keep coming forward. So we do have community flyers that are being developed. Our architects and construction management are putting together flyers. Ben Casa is doing a great job of putting those up on our website. We link those to our key news and our staff updates, but they'll always be there on the website for the community to go and take a look at what our progress is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. We're looking for the approval of the committee of the whole meeting minutes of January 13th, 2025, and approval of the vouchers and receipts. Any questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, that is approved by consent. Move down to personnel topics.
I just have my director's report. So at the committee of the whole, I presented on the class size policy and around the updated policy that we are proposing tonight. I want to make it clear, and I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, that we have no intention of reducing paraprofessional.
Can you talk in the microphone, please, Rachel, really loud?
We have no intention of reducing paraprofessional allocations with the revision of this policy. We did include in the policy clear guidelines that ensures that decisions regarding class size align to best practice, evidence-based research around teaching and learning. And again, I'll be talking about that when we get to class size later in the agenda. I also talked about the handbook revisions that are being proposed tonight. So in the professional staff handbook, some adjustments around the elimination of salary reviews, the addition of personal days, the elimination of 1 sick day in lieu of that personal day, and then the revision to the support staff handbook that if there was an unexcused absence before a paid holiday, that paid holiday would not be then paid. And that, again, is unexcused. It's a no-show. We don't know why they're gone. I presented a presentation around staff retention. So we have been making really positive progress around our staff retention efforts. And I will do another update around that work in the spring. And then lastly, the board approved the calendar that was proposed. So thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on to student learning topics.
Okay, I also just have my director's report tonight. At the last committee of the whole meeting, I shared information regarding the direct admit program that the district is participating in this year. Again, that's a program open to our current junior students, and it streamlines the college application process for most of the University of Wisconsin schools. There was a question at the committee of the whole meeting in regards to why 3 of the universities are not participating in the program. We did have our initial training with the direct admit coordinator, and this question was addressed because it is a frequently asked question. And the response is that, as I had stated before, this was not a mandated program, but rather this was a choice. And then the second piece is that the direct admit is a more streamlined process, and those 3 universities have chosen at the current time that they would like to continue on with their more holistic, comprehensive application process. So that's the reason why they are not currently participating. And we have started to share information with our families, and we'll continue to do that. We have more detailed information going out in February. So that was it for me. Any other questions?
We do not have any, thank you. Moving on to student service topics.
My director's report was on special education and open enrollment for the 25-26 school year. We'll be talking more about that when we get to the action items tonight.
Thank you. And finance and facilities.
All right, so I got a couple exhibits that I just want to bring to your attention. I'll use the school board, or use the director's report that I give you each month as we enter the second half of the fiscal year right now. I provided this update, and you'll see this standard as we move forward. So this is as of today, which is the beginning of the second semester. So we are halfway through our student contact days. And then this is ultimately just laid out fund by fund. And we have, about 9 categories of expenses here. So we have employee salaries, employee benefits, purchase services, so on and so forth. A lot of different things go into each category. But we ultimately have a budget amount. What we've expensed or encumbered means we have not written the check for it yet, but we have issued a purchase order, basically entering the beginning of a purchase there. And then ultimately how much of the budget we have remaining. Here in Fund 10, you can see we have 59.4% of our budget remaining. And then fund by fund, it goes in that direction. All in all, the health of the fund is going to be kind of dictated in a big picture sense. So like in special education, we are halfway through the school year, and we have 52% of the budget left. So to me, that makes sense. This one stands out here, Fund 39, referendum debt. We have a $6.5 million budget. We've only spent $200,000. This represents the interest payment we made in November, and then all the remaining money here represents what we will pay on April 1st for interest and principal, plus whatever we decide to prepay for the high school. Yep, so middle school debt will not come online until 2 years from now. So there's just all information about the funds there. I have no concerns to share with you, but I just want to give you a quick rundown of what this exhibit is fund by fund. If you have any questions, just reach out to me, ask me at a board meeting or offline, doesn't matter. Here, a lot of numbers on the screen here, but ultimately I'm just, again, trying to measure the health of the school district and where we are. This here represents payroll by payroll, how much we have paid out each payroll. So payroll 1, payroll 2, 13, 14, 15, and it goes all the way out to the 31st payroll here. So I have 5 years of data, the current year and 4 years prior. We did the 16th payroll on January 17th. So ultimately, the 4 prior years, this middle area here represents how much in aggregate we've spent following the 16th payroll, and then this is how much we spent at the end of the school year. Ultimately, I turn these into percentages, and I say, well, what percentage of the budget have we spent following the 16th payroll, and where did that lead to in the end? And what I can ultimately use is to use math regression to say, using the 4 years prior, we have 49.1% of our budget expensed. I'm predicting, based on prior year's data, that we will spend 99% of our budget, or in other words, we'll be 1% under budget. These are the 4 years prior of data, just in a regression line, and ultimately there's a super strong correlation. So the data, in other words, feels like it's really trustworthy, like you can make good decisions with this data. I won't get too much into what all this stuff here is. I'm sure Craig remembers from his math days in high school, but it's regression analysis. It helps us predict kind of where we are and where do we think we're going to land. So it's a little bit of guesswork, but it's very educated guesswork. I'm simply saying no concerns at this time. Salaries is the biggest part of our budget, and we're measuring that. Then finally here, I'm just, this is, when we reconcile our books and what we have in our financial accounting software ought to match what our bank statements say. So Linda Scafidi, our accountant, does a really good job. We just wrapped up the month of November. And November is historically our low water cash point of the year. So here's July, first month of the fiscal year, to August, September, October, November. So this represents our cash position in Fund 10. So over the last couple of years, we have increased our fund balance to handle whatever unexpected one-time costs might occur. We added $2.5 million to Fund 10 in fund balance last year, which we could have transferred to Fund 46. And another way to say, let's set this money aside for future building needs. But it wasn't financially advantageous for us to do that. We answer that question every July. So we held off on it this past year. So you can see that we grew the health of Fund 10. And really when an outside bond rating agency or anybody says, well, what's the health of the school district? They're going to look right at this. So I'm just going to take the month of November here, and then I put it on its own graph here. Bear with me. So this is our November cash position. In other words, here we had $8.7 million in November 2024. If the board were to ask me, Tom, how much do we have available? Should we have a problem? Should we have some one-time needs? The answer is right there, 8.7. Now, if we spent all that money, we would bottom out and have no cash to our names in November, which would require us to short-term borrow. We tried to avoid that. But that money there, again, is how I'd state it for you and for everybody in the community. This is there for one-time purchases. If we were to build a budget that had a deficit in it, we would be drawing down on these numbers. And I would caution you before you did that, okay? But all in all, we're doing well. The current budget's well, and there's our position right there. Any questions about that? Okay. Yeah, other than that, at the last meeting, I gave you an update on our Fund 73 OPEB investments, doing well there. That's all I have for the director's report.
All right, thank you. Moving on to action items, hires, retirements, and resignations.
We don't have any tonight.
We have none.
Okay. Then we have the item number 2, revision and renaming of policy 2312 guide for class size. I'm going to ask Craig Virts to chair this, please.
Sure. Number 2, Rachel,
Yep. So I have some information.
you want to go on this?
I'd like to share some more information. Yeah,
Okay.
if possible.
Please.
Okay, great. Tom, you can click for me. All right, so just wanting to reiterate some information around what we're proposing, why we're proposing it. So the revision to the class size policy, our why behind that. So first off, our current policy is restrictive. It is very black and white in nature. It tells us when we hit this, we have to do this, which does not afford, again, our principals, our leaders to flexibly staff where needed and when needed. The current policy warrants part-time staff, so part-time teachers and part-time assistants, and those just don't exist anymore. The market for part-time staff is incredibly low. We have seen that when we go to try and hire recess monitors who are staffed at 10 hours per week. That pool is a shrinking pool. So again, part-time is just a really difficult position to fill. The number of students in a classroom is not the only indicator that warrants additional support. So we know that we might have a classroom with 18 students, and the need for additional support is not necessarily the same as a classroom with 18 students who have incredible academic needs. There are other factors that would mitigate support, right? Achievement data, age of the students, behavioral needs, all of those things are pieces that we need to take into consideration when we look at where we are putting additional support. And again, evidence-based teaching and learning research would tell us that it's not just the number of students in a classroom that matters. In fact, what research does tell us is that the teacher and his or her instructional practices, what the teacher is doing in the classroom, is what has the highest impact on student achievement. It is not the number of adults in the room. It is what the teacher is doing. The teacher, the certified qualified teacher, is doing with his or her students. That is what the research suggests. Tom? So let's squash some of the rumors that I've heard are out there. I don't know, I'm not on social media, but I've heard that there are some rumors out there, so let's squash those. So the first one we've heard is we're eliminating kindergarten assistants. So for like the 10th time, we are not eliminating kindergarten assistants. What we are doing is removing paraprofessionals from the policy language. We aren't removing paraprofessionals. We know paraprofessionals have a role in our schools. They play an integral role in student achievement. What this policy what we are doing is mimicking essentially a staffing model and policy language that is used across every high achieving district in our surrounding area. So if you remember back when we first introduced this, we did a comparison of what do other policies look like. And we started to look at this because we were running into so many staffing barriers. And so when we started to conduct our research, we are the only district that has paraprofessionals listed in our policy. And so the idea that our students are going to suffer, our classrooms are going to suffer, again, we're not eliminating paraprofessionals, and districts that quite honestly are outperforming us right now do not have policies that look like this. Will class sizes grow as a result of this policy? So right now, and I'm going to show you in a minute, our current class sizes and then the projections for 25-26 based on our enrollment. And what you'll see is that we are well below the average class size of our neighboring districts, as well as below the class size that's in the policy recommendation. We have no intention of raising class sizes to levels that are going to negatively impact student learning. We know that a kindergarten section of 30 students is not good for kids. It's not good for kids, it's not good for adults, it's not good for anybody's sanity. We're not going to do that. What we are going to do is look at, again, how can we get the best staff in front of our students? And right now, what we are prioritizing is smaller class sizes staffed with a certified teacher rather than what our current policy does, which is if you get to a larger class size, then we can hire a paraprofessional. And so again, I'm going to talk about that when I show you some of the projections. And then doesn't the district value kindergarten assistants? I've talked to a lot of kindergarten assistants in the last few days. We absolutely value the work. If you've sat in a kindergarten classroom for even a half of a day, it is one of the hardest jobs and most rewarding jobs in the world. Kindergartners say the funniest things. But we're not eliminating the position. And again, I just want to reiterate, we're removing the restrictive language of the policy. At no point in time have we said we are removing or reducing paraprofessionals. That is not the intent.
Rachel, wouldn't you say that these kindergarten paraprofessionals are the most passionate people you've ever met in your entire life?
I mean, I think anybody who works in an elementary school is pretty darn passionate. But yes, kindergarten.
The discussions I had with them was off the charts as far as.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't imagine not doing this job.
Absolutely. Yep.
And where did the fake news come from? It seemed everybody had right off the bat fake news to start the conversations we had.
I mean, I can't speak to where people get information. I can just always, what I would say is I would always encourage people to reach out and talk to us when they have questions, because everyone who I was able to have a conversation with ended usually with a thank you for helping me to understand, or that's not what I was told, so I'm glad right? So I think just reaching out and talking to the people who are most closely, connected to what's happening is far better than spinning on something. But again, I can't speak to where things started. So a question was asked, like, how did you come up with these numerical recommendations? So in the former policy, so again, going back to the very beginning a few months ago, we started with 2 different drafts of a revised policy that we took to our different committees. And both committees viewed the draft that had numerical recommendations associated with each grade level as being more favorable than a complete removal. And again, in most high-achieving neighboring districts, there are not numerical recommendations. But we kept them, and we said, okay, well, do we need to change anything here? And so what we did, in like any collaborative entity does in Wisconsin, we have a consortium that shares their data. We had 27 districts in southeastern Wisconsin that put together, I just gave you a little screenshot of data that looks like this. For each of their grade levels, what's the high class size, what's the lowest class size, and then what does that equate to for an average standpoint? So that's 4 different districts, and that's their average, that's their high, that's their low for first grade. Out of the 27 districts, we looked at what were the highest achieving of those 27. And as you can imagine, many of them, Waukesha County Schools, right, neighboring. We then looked at our enrollment trends. So again, what are we seeing in our enrollment? And that's how we determined what our grade band ranges would be. We didn't want it to be a arbitrary, we think that 22 kids is a solid number for first grade. We wanted it to be based on, this is what we think, again, high achieving districts are doing around us. This puts us in the norm with other area school districts, so that, right, especially when we're talking about staff retention, we don't want somebody to come to us and say, well, in Mukwonago, they're stacking classes in first grade at 25, but if I go over to Kettle Moraine, they're sitting at 18. We wanted to make sure that, again, we were in the norm with our surrounding area districts, as well as with, again, what high achieving districts are doing. We wanted something that was data driven. That is how we should be making decisions. And so that is where those class size ranges came from, was looking at, again, 27 districts who submitted their information and then pulling that data and making those recommendations. Tom, you can, thanks. All right, so this is our current enrollment if you look kindergarten through 3rd. And again, what I want to draw your attention to is if we look at kindergarten, we're not seeing classes that are above 20 students. In our current policy, as it's written, we would not have kindergarten assistants past 13 hours in this classroom. But we are not, we're putting kindergarten assistants in past 13 hours. Why? Because we know, right, that there are some kindergarten classrooms that need additional support. So even without the policy, we're already, right, making some decisions. What we'd like to do is align our policy with our practice, right? Let's be able to staff classrooms the way that we believe is best for kids. If you go to the next slide, Tom, please. If you look at our projected section counts for next year, Tom has already presented that we are facing declining enrollment. Our projected kindergarten sections for next year are low. We are talking about section sizes, again, in the teens. And so when we look at that, and then we talk about, right, the narrative that we've heard in terms of conflict with this policy seems to be centered on kindergarten. We haven't really heard anything from our secondary friends. And so when we look at this, and Tom, I'm going to have you go to the next slide. What we're talking about here is our kindergarten assistants as a sample of how, as a building principal, I might implement this policy. In the table above, that's what currently exists. Our assistants are staffed with our kindergarten teachers through the entire instructional program. Arrival, literacy, recess, math, play workshop. What we're suggesting is giving the principal the ability to say, hey, kindergarten teacher, next year, if you have a class of 15 and your 15 students do not need support during rest time or intervention, could we look at taking that teacher and putting them into a first grade classroom during their literacy block? Because what we know is that instruction requiring high levels of differentiation, literacy block, math block, that's when we need the most support in a room. That's when we have the biggest scope of need. And so that's what we're asking in this proposal. Arrival, if you look right at kindergarten, if you've ever seen kindergartners come into a building, right? We got our backpack, we got our lunches. We have to tell you about what my mom said to me this morning and what grandma did and what, right? Like it is kind of a lot. We're not gonna remove a paraprofessional at arrival. But again, during the PM recess, 1 teacher to 15 students outside, is that is that something that we could do? Probably. And does it make sense for kids? Let's have that conversation. And so again, in the current policy, what we want to be able to do is have these conversations. It's not an all or nothing approach. It's just can we open the door to, again, putting support. If I go back to that first slide, I have a kiddo in first grade who really could use an adult check-in. You know what? During that PM recess, could you go and do an adult check-in with that kiddo, right? Like it's making decisions like that we haven't been doing in the past. Could we open the door to that conversation? And so that's, again, what we're trying to do with this policy. Tom, can you click, please? Here are just some other considerations. So one is, I think when we think about support in the classroom, right, again, we're talking about regular ed paraprofessionals. Our special education support right now in our district at the elementary level sits at about a 1 adult to every 2 student ratio. That is that's well below, again, county comparisons. And that support is provided in the general education setting as well as the special education setting. So I think we have to also remember that when we talk about that support, they're in there, right, supporting most certainly students who have special education needs, but we're also, right, these are all of our students. The numbers that I showed you, those projections for 25-26, do not take into account our open enrollment numbers. However, in looking at those projections, we do not anticipate that those numbers are going to increase the number of projected sections that you saw. I think the other piece that when in talking to a lot of kindergarten assistants, one of the things we also heard was this is their first experience in school. And I think historically that has been true, and it still is true for some students. However, with the addition of 4K in many of our sites and with the growing expansion, hopefully, of 4K, most of our students, their first experience in school is 4K. And we have no intention of changing our 4K staffing model, which is they are staffed with a full-time assistant. And if you think 5K is fun, go into a 4K setting. Even more exciting, right? And so again, our 4K environment is also staffed with a full-time assistant, and we have no intention of changing that. Tom? So again, just some additional information before you take action.
Well, since this is an action item, do we need a motion and a second before we can have conversation on this?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the revision and renaming of policy 2312.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Anybody want to jump in here, conversation?
Yes. So on Friday, I was receiving a lot of emails. We all were. And I started getting a lot of calls. I'm like, oh boy, it's going to be a long weekend. So cleared my afternoon on Friday, and I bounced around the schools and met a lot of teachers. We had this discussion, and I think your explanation tonight really cleans up a lot of their concerns. Their biggest concern was the kindergarten teachers losing an assistant. And that was across the board. They're like, you can't effectively do the job during learning kindergarten without an assistant. But I think you clarified all that and cleaned that up. So I think you answered a lot of questions. So thank you.
Anybody else? Mike?
Yes, so I just want to state this, what I think I heard, for the public to listen in on this. So basically, got a real small or a smaller size kindergarten this year. You can have the flexibility to, at certain times when they're really not needed in the kindergarten, move in the first grade. Then the principals of each of these schools gets to decide. Maybe the next year you have a much larger kindergarten class. And you go, I'm not letting that assistant go for anything. It's entirely up to each principal, correct?
Correct. And I hesitate to use the word not needed because I think that most of our kindergarten teachers, to your point, Dale, and most of the assistants that I talk to would say, I am used every minute of the day. And I think they are. They are absolutely utilized regardless of the time of day.
Great point. Thank you for that correction.
I think that what I would say is that what we're hoping to do is look at more than just, again, the number of students in a classroom when we look to allocate support. So that's what we're asking principals to work in conjunction with their classroom teachers, right? Classroom teachers know their students better than anybody, sometimes better than the building administration. And so it's opening the door to the conversation to say, this is on the table for discussion, that again, if you have a class of 1 adult to 15 students, and I've been in many kindergarten classrooms, our students are phenomenal. And so 1 adult to 15 students, that opens the door to a conversation of, I have a need where I might have 23 first graders. Developmentally, first graders and kindergartners are not worlds apart. And so could I look at, right, taking that assistant and pushing them in for a few, some time in first grade? That's what we're asking. It's not that someone's not needed, it's that how do we prioritize the needs of our building and the staff that we have? That's what we're asking to take place.
Okay, so overall, thanks again for really getting into the weeds on explaining this. I am more than confident the process will work at this time. I was kind of confident before, but I'm much more confident right now, and I think the flexibility of putting it in the hands of the principals, that's what they get paid to do, and if there's going to be issues, we can always change and redirect.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Crosby.
So just to clarify, and I think you said this, so by moving to this policy the way we're looking at it tonight, puts us more in alignment with what we're currently doing.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to actually follow our current policy, what would that look like? Like, can you bring up the schedule and can you show us what that would really look like if we were truly following the policy as it's written right now?
It would be difficult for me to show you the exact implication. We definitely could get that for you. I think the biggest piece is that our policy currently states that you have to hit a threshold before you're getting that 20, whatever it is, Tom, 28.75 in a kindergarten classroom. None of our kindergarten classrooms are at that threshold.
They'd be at the 13 hours.
They'd be at 13 hours. And again, hiring an assistant for 13 hours does not exist.
Right.
And so again, that really,
Well, it doesn't help the teacher either.
no,
Right.
no.
The practical impact of that would be a reduction in hours across the staff, which is something we wouldn't want to do because that would be counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish right now.
Right.
Which is providing the support where the support is needed.
Okay, thank you.
And just so the principals here, if they're watching, overwhelmingly, the staff as a whole, they were confident that you would make the right decisions with the moving the paraprofessionals around. So,
Rachel, real quick. Oh, sorry, Dale, you done?
yes.
Rachel, real quick. So how are you going to explain to the paraprofessionals and the teachers and the principals that this is just the way to go? I think they agree with this conversation we just had, but can you explain? I'm sure you're going to explain that to them.
Yeah, so our principals are in full support of this. They have been at the table. They have talked about this at nauseum. So in terms of explaining it to them, I don't think that that's the charge. I think it's really a matter of helping our principals talking to their staff and helping their staff to understand it. Because I think, like we've said, once we sit down and talk to someone about the implications of this, answer their questions, talk about the what if, and get that on the table, most people walk away feeling a sense of relief. So I think it's really just getting channels of communication available to those stakeholders so that people feel I can ask my questions, I can quell my fears, and the principal right now is the first line of defense for that because, quite honestly, they are the ones who are going to be implementing this policy. And so I think, again, they're well equipped to do that, and that would be my response.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. We had, anybody else? Eric?
I know you don't have your glasses on. They're pretty, by the way. So, does first grade have paraprofessionals? I don't know.
Only if they hit a certain threshold.
Currently.
Correct.
So moving forward, are we going to take some of the first grade and move them down? Like, how does that work? We're only going to move up?
So this would, Tom, can you go back to on the, yep, right there. Nope, one more. So if you look right now, currently, and you go to Big Bend and Clariden's third grade. So they are at 25 across the board at Big Bend and then 26, 25 at Clarendon. Based on our policy, they were all afforded 20 hours a week in each of their classrooms, 20 hours support person per week in their classroom. Well, again, when we went to hire 20 hours a week, you can imagine we did not find that very easily. We ended up having to hire for more hours, and then it was kind of a puzzle putting that together. What we would be saying is, to your question, that third grade, right, that's warranting 25 and getting 20 hours, that's all gone. And instead, it's, here are my paraprofessionals, and where do I need to place them? And again, no one is going to argue and say kindergarten doesn't need paraprofessional support. There's no doubt about that. As a principal, if I'm looking at Big Ben, and I'm Greg Burton, I'm looking at third grade and saying, I've got some big numbers there. Again, it's a matter of where now do I need to put that support? Do I need to put that support in their literacy block, in their math block? Do they need them, right? Like, it's just giving them the ability to do that. And maybe that third grade paraprofessional also pushes down to second grade for a small period of time. It's giving them that flexibility to make those decisions. So yes, it is looking at paraprofessionals as a whole, not just per grade level. Did that answer your question?
Yes. So essentially, we're taking paraprofessionals, they're going to be floaters. To a point.
I think, again, to a point. I mean, there is value in having a steady presence and experience for kids. So we're not necessarily taking a paraprofessional and going to put them XYZ each month. That's not good for kids. They would have a daily schedule like they do now.
Good, Eric?
Yeah.
Thanks, Rachel. Anybody else?
I got one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we're clear on this for the public and for the paraprofessionals that are watching. Nobody's losing their job. Nobody's getting their cut hours. This just gives the principals an opportunity to move people around as needed.
Yes.
Thank you, Eric.
And just for perspective for the board, we did begin this conversation with our principals, with teachers, and with parents in September. And so we had pointed conversations at committee meetings for 3 months before we started to push this conversation then up to the board committee of the whole for discussion as the board body. So there was a lot of feedback on the front end of this policy recommendation.
Okay. All in favor of the policy number 2312 guide for class size? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, moving on to number 3, delete policy 2312.01 guide for secondary class size.
With the passing of the new policy, it encompasses K-12 or 4K-12. This policy is no longer needed as it was designated solely for secondary.
I'll make a motion to delete policy 2312.01.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Moving on to number 4, open enrollment projections.
So two items kind of go together. The first one is open enrollment. So the board has to allocate seats. We went over this at the committee of the whole, but specifically tonight, there's 2 questions that we need some feedback on as it pertains to this recommendation. So we need to determine, based off of the board, if feedback, if students who are currently attending our schools and will be moving out of the district, if we want to guarantee a seat to those students, and that we want to guarantee a seat to siblings of currently attending open enrolled students. So we have to decide, do we want to, by vote, do we want to guarantee a seat to students who are currently attending our schools and moving out? And then do we want to guarantee a seat to siblings? If the board does not want to guarantee those things, our administrative guideline that dictates how we operate says that those students would be given preference, but would not be guaranteed. So if we had space in a program or in a seat, the student would get preference.
So open enrollment projections, we're approving, looking at, I'm just going to pull it up again, just so everybody's clear with that explanation. So are we approving the, we're going to guarantee or preference?
So the, yeah, so those are the 2 questions. So our open enrollment is based off of class size, and that's how our that's been historically.
Okay, I see what you're doing, the 4 and the 5.
Correct.
So, Doctor, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation would be that we would give preference, but that we would not guarantee a seat under open enrollment. So that would be how I would recommend we would implement this going forward.
Do you need a motion on that?
I would need, so if we approve the open enrollment recommendations for general education, then it would have to include that we would give preference to students who have moved out and preference to siblings of children who attend our district.
Okay, we'll have to make motions on those separately though, just because they're listed separately.
Yep.
Okay.
So if we want to give preference, what do we say to make the motion?
So we would move to
Walk me through it, Joe.
Yep. So we would make a motion to approve the open enrollment projections as presented, while giving preference to students who currently attend our schools and will be moving out of the district. And then a second motion that we would give preference to siblings of currently attended open enrollment students.
Excellent. I make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions and comments? Hearing none.
I got one.
Oh, Carolyn?
So students that are currently attending our schools and then coming back, so let's say they're a 5th grader and they're open enrolled in 5th grade, they'll be coming back for 6th grade. They have to reapply for 6th grade, or are they, once you're in, you're in?
Once you're in, you're in. This would be if you were a Mukwonago resident and you moved to East Troy and you had to apply for open enrollment to stay here.
Okay.
Would we give you preference to stay, or would we guarantee you a seat? And I would recommend we would give preference in those cases.
And then a question, let's say if somebody has a 4K in our district, their siblings in the district that are open enrolled in, and now they have a 4K in our district, is that considered in our district? That's just a question.
Is the 4K
4K.
program? Yeah, 4K is in our elementary schools and in our partner sites. That is an in-district seat.
So that is, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All those in favor of the open enrollment projections, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. So we have to do these separate. Number 5, do we need any other language put into this, Joe? If we are going to approve?
Christine will take us through the special education open enrollment.
Okay.
And we can put up on the screen just what the recommendations are from a space standpoint.
Do we need to make the separate motion for the siblings, or is that what this is?
I'm sorry, I thought I worded it such that Crosby adopted what I said.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought you said then we would need a second motion.
But I think her motion was what I had just
Copy paste?
said.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Then if we get into the open enrollment for special education, Christine, if you could take us through that, please.
Sure. So during the committee of the whole meeting, I provided an update regarding open enrollment for our special education students. So currently, we do not have sufficient related service providers to address additional needs of students outside the Mukwonago area school district. So furthermore, our special education teachers are all at capacity or nearing capacity for their current caseloads of recommended ratios, including special education, and then again, those related services, speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy. So my recommendation would be that we do not have seats available for students with special education needs at this time.
Okay, we're looking for a motion for number 5, open enrollment for special education.
Okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the recommendation of having no open enrollment seats for special education.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I would like to comment, sorry, I know you weren't asking me per se, but I would like to comment that every time we get an application for open enrollment, it will come with the appropriate paperwork, such as an IEP. I always make sure that myself or my team look through all of those paperwork to see like if there's any possible way that we can serve. Typically the answer has always been no, but I do want you to know it's not an open and shut decision. Like we always do our best to take a look at each individual profile that comes through.
I do have one question then.
Carolyn?
Is there an option if we have a student that comes in with an IEP, let's say it's a speech need, that their home district could provide that service for them and that they could still come and be in the Mukwonago school district? Or is that not an option, or is that ever anything that's ever been done?
In my experience, they've tried to get those services here. I have not had the experience where they go back to their home district. Typically, if parents, they'll revoke consent in our district for services and then do private therapy.
Okay.
And that's the funding discussion that's associated with it. If you come here, the funding follows you. And most resident districts then will not say, all right, we'll serve, and then they can get their education there.
True. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the open enrollment for special education action item, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Do we need to wait for Craig?
No, we still have a quorum.
Okay.
Budget assumptions.
All right, as we move into building next year's budget, we need to start with some assumptions here. So we are looking to, I'm looking for you to drive the assumptions that we ultimately adopt. I'm recommending that we have a third Friday student count that reduces by 125 FTE, that we assume we are going to receive $325 per student increase on our revenue limit amount, that there will be no additional money on our per pupil categorical aid amount, which is currently $742 per student. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Pardon me. I'll pull this up here. And then finally, we will simply add a very modest amount to our special education categorical aid. There we go. Just bear with me here as I make this bigger. Those are the assumptions. Now, there's a lot of assumptions that we need to get into here as we continue to move along, and we'll make those together each month. But obviously, those 1, 2, and 3, the amount of money per students in those 2 areas, along with the count of students, is going to define 87% of our budget. So those are the biggies, right? We got to really adopt those here. So what we choose now is obviously probably not going to be what it ultimately winds up being, but we're trying to pick something that's realistic, yet conservative, but not too aggressive, just something that just makes sense. We'll find out, these amounts hopefully by May, maybe not until June, perhaps not until July, but we got to start rolling and making decisions right now. So looking for you guys to adopt this or something of your choosing.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget assumptions as stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Carolyn?
Can you remind me what we projected last year and what our negative or what our count was? I know we went down, but what was our projection? I feel like we were, because we tried to guess, and I don't remember where we were.
I can't go back in time like that, Carolyn. I'm
Come
trying to
on,
look forward
Tom.
here. Can I get back to you and bring that to you in February?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm purely curious because I know I think we agreed that we were going down, and we were relatively close. We were never as close as you get with numbers, but
Yeah, I'll let you know what we did. You know, this is I'll bring that back to you if that's all right.
Yep.
So I guess just to keep the
Question exactly?
So we had a discussion around what we thought our population growth plus or minus would be, and I know we thought we were going to go down. I just couldn't remember what our guess was, and I couldn't find it in my notes, and I want to figure out how close we were.
So just as we adopt those basic budget assumptions there, I shared this 5-year projection with you, which was just an initial pass. I brought this on January 13th. We need to obviously work on reducing this red number here is a negative 1,034,000. This number has already changed from 2 weeks ago. It changes virtually weekly for sure, sometimes daily, sometimes hourly, based on a teacher intends to retire. You're already making an assumption that you're going to bring in a replacement, potentially if they're with lesser experience, maybe at a lesser cost. So these things change all the time. There's assumptions in here for health insurance. What's the renewal going to be? Will it be a plus 5%? Will it be a plus 10%? Either one is going to change that. But we have some work to do now that we have our basic budget assumptions there to close this down. And we'll talk about your budget priorities here in February. So I guess that's really my segue, or Dale's segue, into going to the next budget, or to the next action item, which is the budget calendar. So sorry, I didn't mean to steal your job there, Dale. But
we have to vote on the previous.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, excuse me.
Can you bring that one back up there real quick?
Show your roll, Jack.
All right, we have a motion and a second on budget assumptions. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Moving on to budget calendar.
All right, sorry for getting ahead there, folks. But here we go. For the calendar then, I'm just laying out month by month what we're looking to do in each month at the committee of the whole and at the board meeting. This gives us an understanding as to when we will address issues, make decisions, and then we'll proceed accordingly to this calendar. Again, this a little bit, the next board that gets elected and is here for starting in April and beyond, you will ultimately have to decide when the annual meeting is and those things. But assuming we follow last year's model and we do it in September, we're really kind of starting in September and building things backwards to make sure that we give ourselves the room and the time to do all that we have to do. So as you kind of just take a look at where we're at in February, we adopted the assumptions, so we check that off the list. And then we start looking at a 5-year budget projection. And then on the 24th of February, board discussion on budget priorities. You tell us what you're looking for as we build this final budget. So looking to approve this calendar.
Make a motion, we approve the calendar as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Crosby?
Tom, and you might not be able to answer this right now because I know this is kind of new, but I know some of the other school districts, and I think this was brought up at WASB this year, are talking about decoupling the school choice programs from the local school districts. Can you shed any light on how that will affect our budget? I believe it's positively, but I just wanted to double check.
So the basic argument or idea right now is that we as a school district, we levy a tax to pay for students that go to private voucher schools. That number has increased exponentially over the 7 or 8 years that this has been in existence. So the number of kids that attend a private voucher school and get approved for funding, we levy the tax and we just simply serve as a fiscal agent. We collect it. We actually never even touch it. It just gets forwarded on to these folks. But it appears to us, or as the school board, wow, your tax levy keeps going up. Well, you have no control over that. As that program grows, so does that tax levy. To decouple that, then ultimately it would the state legislature should say, okay, rather than funding private voucher enrollment and attendance through property taxes, let's fund this through the 5% sales tax that we collect. You know, there's however many billions of dollars that are in that, and then they would ultimately fund that through a different mechanism. I will bring that to you as a part of that 5-year projection. There's a number of scenarios I'll bring forward, and I actually have somebody, you know, we worked with Robert W. Baird on a lot of different things here. They're awesome partners to have, and a gentleman named Todd Hayeski will be coming in here on Wednesday afternoon to work with me to answer that very question. So I'll bring more detailed information back about what decoupling would mean for us in particular. So there's a few ins and outs that are, I'll save the details that until I can speak specifically about what they mean to us.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay? All right.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the budget calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on to number 8, Fund 73, Resolutions and Trust Agreement.
Okay, this feels like we've been talking about this for a while. But ultimately, we're looking to adopt the resolution authorizing the adoption of 2 restated OPEB trust agreements and the separation of the existing OPEB trust. So this ultimately...
I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
I read this whole thing a couple times, Tom. I'm sure everyone did. I'd like to make a motion, we approve the trust, yeah, that thing.
Agreement.
Fund 73 resolution and trust agreement.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comment? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. All right, health risk assessment.
All right, last thing for me then. We're looking to continue on with our health risk assessment efforts here. Ultimately, what we would like to do is require all employees and spouses on our health plan to have a health risk assessment sometime on or after September 1st, 2024 and before April 15th, 2025. So really the 24-25 school year, we'd like to require this take place at the MASD Health Clinic. And if they do not complete it in that time frame, then they'll pay an additional $500 towards the cost of their health plan through their payroll deductions.
Carolyn?
Oh,
Making a
we have to make
motion?
a motion.
Yes.
I don't want to do that, so I'm not.
I'll make a motion to accept the health risk assessment number 2 as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Carolyn?
Why? Why? I know why.
Sure.
I think I know why. Why are we doing this?
We are doing this, so at the end of we are doing this to help people. We're trying to help them help themselves, right? There's a lot of people, not saying all of our folks, but there are people who avoid the doctor, who have go 8-10 years between doctor visits. There's a lot of underlying symptoms that can obviously develop. We know what those risks are, what they can be. And so we're really just trying to make sure that early detection is something that all of our people engage in. When we invest over $20,000 into a family plan, it's not outrageous to ask. You need to take a health risk assessment so that we can, the health staff at the clinic can see your vitals and say, hey, do you have any underlying issues? We have had people who disclosed to me that, hey, I was pre-diabetic. I had hypertension issues that I was bordering on a heart attack. From a health perspective, not only are we helping that person, but from a financial perspective, we are thwarting and minimizing huge costs as a self-insured school district. So I understand and I accept the criticism that may come to say, hey, this is inconvenient. My wife has to drive in from Greendale. I get all that. I'll take that criticism, but we are helping people find issues. Not everyone. Some people come in, they have a clean bill of health and they move on, but we do help some people find things they're unaware of. And in terms of the district's investment into each single or family health plan, this is not an outrageous ask. This is something that's somewhat, you'll find it as a common practice in the private sector. So,
Can I add 2 additional pieces, Tom?
I'll allow it.
Thank you, Tom. One is we went back and forth about requiring spouses to complete the health screening at the employee clinic, and eventually landed on yes, employee clinic, because the most favorable feedback we get about our entire healthcare plan is around our employee clinic. And so getting people there to meet Becky, to see what the clinic has to offer as being a zero cost option to people, once people go, they rave about her. And so getting people into that door is important. And then the other piece is we are opening up hours specific to this screening on weekends and after hours, so that, to Tom's point, those people who might not live locally or have to drive in will have some times that they can come and do this that are more convenient perhaps to their schedule.
Jason?
How many repeat offenders do you have? I mean, people that are year after year not completing this assessment.
So we just did it. This last iteration was our first attempt ever doing this,
Okay.
and 97.5% of our employees on our health plan completed it, and 2.5%. So I think it was 356 completed out of 365, so 9 missed. But even of a couple of those 9, a couple teachers were out on maternity leave. It made sense, but we got basically everybody.
Okay.
So it was successful.
Crosby?
Adding the spouse is new this year, correct?
Yes.
Correct. For this year, we just did the employee.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I'll just say I'm personally opposed to this, and I understand the reasons why. I've personally never participated in these before, and I will pay the $500 gladly. That's just my personal opinion, but I understand the reasoning why we're requiring the employees to do it. Well, we're not requiring them. We're just saying, hey, you have to pay the extra $500. I am not in favor of including the spouse.
I really don't care about the 500. The 500 is not the point. The point is, please don't bury the head in your sand when it comes to your health. Early detection may and probably is the very best thing if you have something wrong. We just simply want you to take care of yourself. You know, when it comes to like spouse, again, it's we as a school district, our taxpayers are making investments into these folks. So I think it's a reasonable ask to, again, not bury your head in the sand. Just pay attention to your health. Most folks already are, but not all. So this is something that's is a positive, and I get the resistance at times. I accept the criticism that comes with it. I still stand by and recommend that we do this.
Carolyn?
What's involved in the health risk assessment? Is it just like listen to your heart, blood pressure? Do they take in blood?
Yeah, they take 2 vials of blood. It's there's going to be four tests that take place. It's checking A1C, hemoglobin. There's 4 things, but it takes probably less than 15 minutes, probably 10 minutes total. It's quick. Results come back the next day.
Any other questions or comments? I'd hear none.
I got one more.
Carolyn?
I just wanted to state, I feel similar to Crosby. I would not, this is not something that I get it. It's not required, which I love. But I also don't like punishing staff or spouses who are on our plan if they don't want to do something.
Punishing?
Punishing.
I don't like that
I
word.
think that protects the district
I get it.
financially, too. If we can catch something early, that's going to save costs on the district.
Correct.
I get it, but it's a little bit like government telling you what to do with your own.
You don't have to.
It could also be looked at as a reward for those who participate. No one's getting discipline over not participating. It's simply you get rewarded if you do, and it does save government
We should just, we
monies.
should, yeah.
Keep her moving.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of health risk assessment number 2, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No. That was us.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to employee handbooks.
So we have the updates to the professional staff handbook and the support staff handbook. And the professional staff handbook, just the important note with the revisions, the personal day and the sick day changes, we want to note would not go into effect until the 25-26 school year. I don't know if that matters in the motion that's approved, but it's in the, I'm looking at you because I don't know if that matters. But, and then in the support staff handbook, again, it's the holiday pay that would be impacted. So I can read everything that's in there, otherwise, I don't know if that's necessary.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
So, looking for a motion on the employee handbooks.
I'll make a motion on the employee handbook.
To approve?
To approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the employee handbooks. Any questions or comments? Jake?
Quick question. So one of the things we're doing here is basically converting a sick day to a personal day. Just changing one. Did we consider doing more, and is that something that we would look at in the future, converting more days? Do we think there could potentially be a benefit
Of adding more or converting more?
sick days to personal days?
So we did look at that. I think we said, let's kind of slow roll this. So let's see how it goes with the 2, and you can carry over up to 3, knowing that you can't use them, so they can only use 2 consecutively. They can't use that 3rd day consecutively. I think it's let's watch and see. We have looked at surrounding districts that have gone all the way upwards of, they've switched to all PTO, to 5 days to 4 days. All of them have seen an increase in absenteeism, which is not a surprise. And so I think it's a let's wait and see how this plays out. And then, if it's favorable, if it's going really well, I don't think there's opposition to continuing to look at doing this again.
And the reason I ask, I think this is a move in the right direction.
Absolutely.
When we talked about this a couple weeks ago, it is a bit of a win-win. The employees like it, and it also gives us more lead time to plan for absences.
Yep,
when
absolutely.
personal days are used. So I would just hope that we would watch this
Absolutely.
and consider that possibility in the future.
Yep.
Carolyn?
Do you have the data on what that would look like? And I should have asked you this before the meeting, so you could dig that up. Maybe for schools that have gone to full PTO and just.
So there's only one district around us that moved to that model. That was Wauwatosa. They saw an 800-day absentee increase in their first year with the model. They have now since called it their trial period, and they are done with that after this year. So they are no longer going to be implementing that model. They are the only district that went to a all PTO. Some of the other surrounding districts, like I mentioned, have done 4 days, 3 days. So I don't have their specific data. I can definitely look into getting that. This is a topic, again, I've talked to you all about this before. When I meet with all of the other HR area directors, it's something that we have discussed. But again, everybody's a little bit all over the board, ranging somewhere in between that 3 to 5 day, I would say, is the norm.
Cool.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the employee handbook, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on to number 11, administrator contracts.
Yep, in front of you is the list of administrators in the district, and we are recommending everybody's contract roll forward and requesting action from the board to do so.
I'll make a motion that we approve the administrator contracts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the administrator contract, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Motion carries. Moving on to unfinished business, superintendent's report.
So first semester is in the books. I can't believe that we have hit that. It's like the steady climb up and then the steady descent down towards the end of the year. Really want to thank our teachers and our principals and the support staff that we have in our schools. Things are moving along very, very well this year. Just been very impressed with what we see dropping in, what we hear from families. Just overall, just a tremendous environment to be in. Want to take a minute to thank our buildings and grounds team. I sent you that in the update on Friday. But our B&G team was very busy with all the cold weather. As you can imagine, a part fails and suddenly a part of the school gets colder. Andy and his team were outdoors and indoors at all hours, keeping our buildings up and running. They do a great, great job. Weather days, we did have to cancel a day last week. I don't like to have to cancel school.
It was cold. It was cold.
It was very cold. It was very cold. It was just one of those days where you look out your office window and it looks like a day in November or a day in March, and you apply the wind chill to it.
First weather cancellation that I've never had anybody complain about, honestly.
Yep.
Usually you have somebody call and say you're a bunch of...
Yep. I get all those. Just so you know, we do collaborate. We listen to the National Weather Service. And for our community, we listen to the National Weather Service. They give us several updates going into any weather event. They will have superintendent's calls at 3:45 a.m. and then usually 3 p.m. the prior afternoon. We do collaborate regionally just to see what information do people have and what are your neighbors doing in these situations. So we have a regional superintendent's call just to make sure that we're factoring in all the information, but it really does come down to a local decision. It is my preference, whenever possible, to cancel school the afternoon or early evening beforehand. We know parents, particularly at the elementary level, have to find childcare for their kids. If we can give them an additional 12 hours, we want to do that. We did send home weather-related closure information, but the cold warning, we go off of warnings. We don't go off of advisories, we go off of warnings, and the new cold warning, the National Weather Service changed this, is minus 30 degrees sustained wind chill. So, you might have a moment where it was minus 30, but really you're looking at that overall dangerous condition. And the times of the day that we really focus on are the arrival and then the dismissal. If we have something happen in the middle of the school day, we're safe, we're in our buildings, we don't need to go outside for recess, we keep our kids in. Our principals do a great job. There was some questions that came in a couple weeks ago. What do we use as a threshold? If either the real field temperature or the actual temperature is below 0, we don't go outside for recess. And our principals use AccuWeather so that they're all consistent with that. They use AccuWeather as the measurement. The final thing, we have one more school coming in at the Committee of the Whole in February, and I really want to thank the board for the opportunity to kind of change how we did the student rep thing. Dale and I had a conversation last week as we were getting ready for this meeting. The feel of having elementary kids come up and present and the excitement that they have and how they present their school information. You watch them, they're sorting through their nerves and everything like that, but they just do an outstanding job. And when we get into board business and we start talking policies, budget, whatever it is, I believe it's really nice for us to be able to see the kids. So we have one more presentation from the students coming up in February. For the remainder of the year, we will maintain presentations by our schools. We will also continue to acknowledge employees of the month. We talked about the value of paraprofessionals. Many of the employees that we have recognized have been paraprofessionals, in addition to our custodial staff or our front office staff. And those folks are behind the scenes, and they just do a tremendous amount of good for our system, for our kids. So really thank them for all of their efforts. And that concludes my remarks.
All right, thank you. President's report. I just want to say it again. I want to thank all the teachers that opened their classroom doors for me this past week. It was great seeing your passion. Loved listening to see how you guys collaborate in your schools and how you work with the kids. It was really rewarding. I'm lucky I can go through the schools because of my lifestyle. I am retired, so I can do those things. Many of them said they encourage other school board members to come on in when you have time and chat with them and see what's going on in the schools. So thank you. And I also want to thank Deb and Matt for always coming here. And seriously, that means a lot that you're always here and you care about the community and the school district. So I believe you can set up appointments with the principals, and they'd be more than happy to have you come to the schools. Right. Absolutely.
And I look forward to Debbie's email about 10:45 tonight, Deb, right? Thank you.
She's already writing it. No, but thank you. that is great that you guys care so much. Yes. Last two standing, by the way, from a full house. All right, that concludes our regular board meeting. We don't have any.
We do have a closed session item.
We do have a close.
Yep, one closed session item, but we will not need to come back into open to approve
Okay.
anything at this point.
All right, next up, we have an executive session, according to Wisconsin statute